Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. And tonight, this is going to be a quasi political video, but I'm going to go back and revisit a topic that I did roughly 6 to 7 years ago. And I'm going to talk about Saul Alinsky, rules for radicals. Now, Saul Alinsky was a social justice warrior way back in the 70s. Now, you also had professors like Cloward and Pivens. You don't hear too many individuals in this sector talking about it because they don't know about Cloward and Pivens. I have talked about it. I've also talked about Saul Alinsky before. He had a book out called Rules for Radicals. And what you do with rules for radicals, you basically try to make everything to be your opponent's fault. For instance, if you criticize your opponent by calling him racist or sexist or homophobe, something the left does, very hard for the right to counteract. Why? Because then the guilt comes out. And this is why the Republicans are always silent. Then you also have this big spending bill, and Trump is going to kill that bill. Mostly Democrats are on that bill. It's a 1,500-page bill. A lot of pork in that bill. And I'm just going to say this. You Republicans out there, you need to vote for another Speaker of the House. This guy, he's another rhino. He's on board with the Democrats. And you're lying to the public about what's going on with the government. Many of you don't even know what's going on with the drones that are flying around out there. There was some radioactive material. Now, I just heard it. Shout out to Brandon Tatum. He brought it up. Just have to give him credit. What is the CIA doing? What is the military doing? All this is to basically make the incoming president look bad. It wouldn't surprise me if they were conjuring up something to make us sick. You have Biden spending a lot of money. Ukraine. The problem is, can you trust your government? The government is using Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals just to stay in power. And in the end, we have to keep putting this information out in the forefront. And what we're going to have to do with a number of these individuals is primary them in 2026. You see, the Democrats got crushed, but they still won't give up. Now, one of Joy Reid's programs has been canceled. I don't watch Joy Reid, but she has an influence on what people believe. The media is still lying. The politicians are still lying. Again, they really want to make Trump look bad. You have individuals in sanctuary cities who aren't going to listen to Trump. Again, I said this in my last video. You mayors, Baltimore, Chicago, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Detroit, you don't want to listen to Trump, Trump's policies, you don't want his help, you don't want to get rid of the sanctuary cities, cut all your funding off. Many of the cities anyway are going bankrupt. Look at Justin Trudeau. He's having an issue with the tariffs. Well, you keep bringing people into our country, you should have a problem. Same with Mexico. We have a lot of issues. Now, it's going to take more than just Trump to turn them around. We need a decade of individuals who are with the people. And see, with this big bill out here, it's got a lot of pork in it, and it's disguised as a spending bill to keep the government open. Shut it down, like Chef Ramsay says. Shut it down. Watch Hell's Kitchen. That's what you need to do. Because the government is just spending money every which way but loose. And you have senators out there who are complaining. They want to raise from $174,000. Congress people. They're getting $174,000 a year now. Well, their raise will put them up around $240,000. And they're saying they can't live off of $170,000 a year. Well, if you can't live under that kind of money, and people like me make between $60,000 and $90,000, and we're living pretty comfortably, you are in the wrong line of work. Get out of politics. Individuals are saying they have to take the bus. In DC, you don't have to take the bus in DC. I worked in DC for years. Get on the metro. It's not like Indianapolis here where you got a bus line. Get on the metro. You even got buses in DC. If your rent is too high, go to another place to live. You don't have to stay in DC. But you got other people struggling who aren't making as much money, and they're making it. So I don't feel sorry for any of these celebrities. I don't feel sorry for any of these politicians. Fuck them. Let them die. It's the way I feel. I'm using the word feel because they're complaining. Cut the government down. We got too many people who are long-term bureaucrats. And I know I have a government job, and I see what government employees do. None of them don't do anything. None of them are sitting out there smoking cigarettes, talking on the phone, coming in with food every day. They're just pushing paper. Some of them smell like smokestacks after all that smoke they do. Yeah, this is for the city of Indianapolis, and this is for the city of Fort Wayne. I've seen them all. State of Indiana, state of Pennsylvania. Worked up my fair share of government jobs. But see, the left is for the government. And the funny thing about government jobs, when the economy is bad, somehow government employees never suffer. And government employees have to remember that, yes, they pay taxes. And I'm not talking about the rank and file government employees either. They're pawns in this game. I'm talking about your leadership, the ones who are bureaucrats, appointed. Then you have upper management, no matter who's in power. Their lifetime. They're living on a system. Now, what I'm going to do is share my screen. And we're going to get into some Saul Alinsky. I have to revisit Saul Alinsky because a lot of people don't know who Saul Alinsky is. Well, again, Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. Now, he passed away way back in the early 70s. Now, Rules for Radicals is what's being used. People don't know it. And Saul Alinsky basically dedicated all of his rules. He has 12 rules to Lucifer. He calls the original radical. Lucifer is one of the names for Satan, the devil, the evil one, the dragon, the book of Revelations, 12:2, 22. You have people like Hillary Rodham Clinton, the Obamas, Howard Pittman's. Most of the individuals are on the left. Now, 2 months before Saul Alinsky died, he told a reporter, there's an afterlife, and I have everything to say about it. I will unreservedly choose to go to hell. That's Saul Alinsky. And this is how some people are, particularly in the Democratic Party and the rhinos out there. But here, let's go over the rules here. And you'll understand what I'm talking about. Rule number 1, power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Power is derived from 2 main sources, money and people. Have-nots must build power from flesh and blood. There are 2 things of which there is a plentiful supply. Government and corporations always have a difficult time appealing to people, and usually do so almost exclusively with economic arguments. Well, who's the enemy? Well, basically, the enemy of the Democrats has always been everybody on the right, which is us. We have a lot of power. We don't know how to use it. So what rule number 1 does, it allows our enemy, the left, to use our power against us. That's Saul Alinsky. And a lot of these rules are working, especially knowledgeable people like myself who don't trust government. Rule number 2, never go outside the expertise of your people. It results in confusion, fear, and retreat. Feel insecure adds to the backbone of anyone. So what this is saying is organizations under attack wonder why radicals don't address the real issues. Why? I'll tell you why. And this is what Kamala Harris did. She avoided issues that she had no knowledge about. You ask her about the economy, this is what she always said. Joy. She always said ambition. She would always flip to something else. Because if she had individuals that were really smart, it would cause confusion. And the Democrats are seeing some of that now. In other words, most of the government, they don't talk about real issues. They act like they know the real issues. They don't know the real issues. But they're so good when it comes out to campaigning, they sound good. It's what a lot of your preachers do. They give you hope, but it's all false. Rule number 3, whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. So here's why you do that. You're going to look for ways to increase insecurity, anxiety, and uncertainty. This happens all the time. Watch how many organizations under attack are blindsided by seemingly irrelevant arguments that they are forced to address, like DEI, sexism. Those are so many issues. In other words, they're really irrelevant. And if you don't address them, or if you do address them, and it's not what one side believes, they're going to cancel you. I.e., you look at YouTube. Been on YouTube for almost 10 years. And there are a number of YouTubers who have come and gone because they said things that were absolutely the truth. But the other side, what they did, they used the system. And the system blindsided some of these YouTubers. and then cancel them. Even if the individuals who went to the system lie. That's what the left does. When they're losing, they're going to bring something up irrelevant. And instead of being logical about it, they're going to get into their feelings because that's how they operate, off of feelings. They don't live in reality. Rule number 4, make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. Here's how that happens. So if the rule is that every letter gets a reply, it's in 30,000 letters, you can kill them with this because no one can possibly obey all of their own rules. This is a serious rule. The besieged entities' very credibility and reputation is at stake because if activists catch it lying or not living up to its commitments, they can continue to chip away at the damage. Well, this is what the left does to the right. And they use the media. And they're still trying to use the media. Because generally, we the people can also use that rule against the government. But many of us aren't smart enough to do it. Because if you think about it, the government never lives up to its commitments. In that bill, they're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to cover up all of the criminal activity that they've committed so no investigations can take place. And when Trump gets into office, he can't even use executive orders. That's what's in that bill. That bill is living by the rules of Saul Alinsky. Rule number 5, ridicule a man's potent weapon. There is no defense. It's irrational. It's infuriating. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into concessions. Pretty crude, rude, and mean. They want to create anger and fear. Well, you know, this is what the right can do to the left. And if you think about it, if the left doesn't get their way, see, we always think the left is using Saul Alinsky against the right. Meanwhile, the left runs like a bunch of babies. You look at Michelle Obama. You didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Something's wrong with you. You're going to lose women's rights. It's irrational. When Trump was in office the first time, did we lose women's rights? Now, do I believe that women have too many rights and should sit down? Absolutely. Because they've gotten very unappreciative about what they have. I mean, if you think about it, you got The View, they're on TV spouting their propaganda. But nobody is checking them on it except us. And see, if you think about it, you look at Joy Reid, you look at The View. They're already angry. They're already creating fear. And see, you do this when you have ignorant people. And the number of people who voted for Kamala Harris are very ignorant. Because when Joe Biden won the presidency in 2020, yeah, people jumping for joy. But I knew what was coming down the pipe. And now, basically, the tide has turned. The Democrats are still trying to utilize their propaganda by making excuses. Here's the problem. They've turned on each other as well. And then with the Republicans, you have the rhinos out here, people like Liz Cheney. And you have a number of other guys out there. And see, sometimes the rule that you're using against somebody else goes back to rule number 4. It gets used back to you. Rule number 6, a good tactic is one your people enjoy. They'll keep doing it without urging and come back to do more. They're doing their thing and will even suggest better ones. Radical activists, in this sense, are no different than any other human being. We all avoid unfun activities, but we revel and enjoy the ones that work and bring results. Black Lives Matter. The one George Floyd. A good tactic. You didn't do what they wanted to. Antifa, they were going to put fear in you. They were going to get violent. They were going to burn down your city. And they proved that in 2020. Rule number 7, a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Well, this is what the left is doing now. Don't become old news. Even radical activists get bored. So to keep them excited and involved, organizers are coming up with new tactics, not the left. They're still talking about Trump this, Trump that. The election's been over for about 6 weeks now. They're still lying. They're still making excuses. They're still trying to fear-monger people on the left. When if you think about it, this rules of radicals, it's come to really bite the left in the ass. But the right doesn't know that. See, the Republicans, particularly you have a lot of rhinos, they're still asleep at the wheel. And you got Mike Johnson, who, to me, he is a terrible Speaker of the House. I want Byron Donaldson to be the Speaker of the House. We got to get all of these rhinos out here. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Joni Ernst. Because this bill, and you know, this bill was mostly a Democratic bill. I'm going to tell you something. Call your Congress people to kill that bill. 1,500 pages. It's a lot of garbage in that bill. And see, what's happened is the Democrats, they have the same old news every day. It's gotten old and tired. You look at the abortion issue, old and tired, doesn't work. And the reason why the Democrats are out of power because they didn't come up with anything new. They still are using the same old playbook. So if you think about it, the rules for radicals is working against them. It's supposed to be for the left. Now, the Republicans don't know this because they're sleeping at the wheel, but I know this because I watch what's going on. Now, here's something the left does do. Rule number 8, keep the pressure on, never let up. Keep trying new things to keep the opposition off balance. As the opposition matters, one approach. Hit them from the flank with something new. Attack, attack, attack from all sides, never giving the reeling organization a chance to regroup, recover, and re-strategize. Well, this is an easy one. When it comes to the left, the bottom line with them is if you keep them off balance, and the right doesn't know how to do this, but the left is always attacking with sexism, racism, misogyny. But see, you don't have enough people on the right who are skillful enough to do this, not in the rhinos. You see, the Republicans fought back and say, no, you know why you keep talking about racism, sexism, and misogyny? Because that's where you are. And what you're trying to do is you think you have a strategy. Remember, the Democrats are playing from the old playbook. The Republicans, they just don't know anything. And I'm giving you my point of view. And so what happens is the Democrats, they attack from all sides. They use the media, they use education. They're even on YouTube. Some of them they try to cancel you. sports. You see all this going on with sports. It's funny because you see all these commercials. You got women playing football. They're trying to make themselves equal to men. And then if men say something about it, they're called misogynists. You even had a little bit of Pete Hegseth. He's kind of changed his mind about women and gays in the military now. Now, nobody ever said they shouldn't be. Really, they should not be on the front lines. They should be in a support role. That's where they should be. Men and women are not the same. But see, you have all these commercials. DEI. You have Joe Biden. He wants to hire 1,200 more DEI personnel before he gets out of office. Again, he's trying to keep Trump off balance. But see, Trump knows Saul Alinsky. He's using it against the left. That's why the left, what they're trying to do, they're trying to tell him who he should nominate, but it's not going to work. And what Trump is doing, he's figuring out, well, who are the snakes that are supposed to be on his team, the Republican Party. So once Trump calls out the snakes, he's going to make sure that they're primary in 2026. Because see, the Republican Party is not the same party anymore. It's the party of MAGA, Make America Great. It's a different kind of Republican Party. It's not the party of the corporations. It's not the party of the rich. That's what the Democrats are. Now, if you look at all this, keep the pressure on, a lot of this, if you think about it, sounds like it comes from the Communist Manifesto, because it's really, you keep pressure on one side, you basically keep the other side off of balance. Keep the other side from counteracting, because they won't be able to counteract because they got blindsided. It's like an ambush. Once you're hit from different ways, there's no way you can strategize. So I know in the military, if you're ambushed, you're either going to become a POW or you're going to die. Well, that's what the Communist Manifesto does. You're either going to do what we tell you to do, or we're going to kill you. Keep the pressure on. Sounds more like a dictatorship. But the ones that are calling Trump a dictator, they're really the dictators themselves. They're just trying to hide under the words of freedom, because they really don't want freedom. I know I heard somebody on Chaotic Truth side saying, well, the right doesn't want freedom. No, the right does. What they don't want is falsehoods like the media. Now, yes, freedom of speech protects speech you don't agree with. That's true. However, it's supposed to work both sides, so work with both sides. If you look at freedom of speech, the left in this country wants their speech. That's the big issue. And when you don't want, or you don't believe their way of doing things, then that's when you get the shaming language, sexist, misogyny. You're anti-woman. You're anti-LGBTQ, P plus. Well, that's what these rules are doing. They're trying to keep one side in power, basically the government right now, both sides. And they're trying to keep us off balance. And it's up to us who know what's going on to make sure that we're watchdogs out here. Because right now, the government is doing nothing but lying. And they're going to keep lying. Because the government wants us to be poor. They want to live off of us. They want raises while we live poor. And they're living off of us. Look how much money they've wasted on Ukraine. And the government, they don't want closed borders. They want open borders, particularly the Democrats. Number 9, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Imagination and ego can dream up many more consequences than any activist. Perception is reality. Large organizations always prepare a worst case scenario, something that may be furthest from the activist's minds. The upshot is that the organization will expend enormous time and energy creating in its own collective mind the dearest of conclusions. The possibilities can easily poison the mind and result in demoralization. Well, if you think about it, this might not be demoralization. You look at George Soros, bought 200 radio stations. George Soros has paid a number of these DAs out here, like Alvin Bragg. There was one that was paid in St. Louis. Probably Fannie Willis. Probably that other black woman up in New York. They're paid. And what they're doing is they can trump up as many charges, and they're expending a lot of energy to do this. One of the judges said, well, we're going to forego the decision to convict Trump of all these charges until he gets out of office. That's what they've created. Now, in the end, is it going to work for him? I don't think so. But that's what they're doing. The worst case scenario for the Democrats was Trump getting in the White House. So he couldn't go to jail right then and there. So now they have to wait. But here's the problem. Trump will be in office and he'll have his people in there. And if Trump has the right people in there, people that he can trust, some of the individuals on the left, they may be going to jail. But I'll keep you informed. Rule number 10, if you push a negative hard enough, it will push through and become positive. Violence from the other side can win the public to your side because the public sympathizes with the underdog. Unions use this tactic, peaceful, albeit loud demonstrations during the heyday of unions in the early mid-20th century incurred management's wrath, often in the form of violence that eventually brought public sympathy to their side. George Floyd, and at that time we had the coronavirus, and it brought a lot of ignorant people out. Well, the left, they love to use violence, especially if they don't get their way. Why? Because they used a dead man to make money off of, the family did. And then they can also use racism, like Al Sharpton. And think about Kamala Harris. They didn't use violence. But that violence would have occurred if, let's say, a white cop, violence did break out. That Marine, not going to bring his name up, everybody knows his name. Black man on the subway threatened to kill people. That Marine stopped it. Well, here's what happened after that. The Marine got off. There was some protests. And I believe there was also some violence, particularly in New York City. But it didn't work. Why? Because nobody felt sorry for that black man. Nobody really felt sorry for George Floyd except the ignorant people. And see, what draws people to the underdog is emotions, because you have the individuals who are probably the underdog themselves, and they're the underdog because they made a poor decision in their life not to go get the best job, not to go get the education to get them a better job, not just education. They didn't go in the military. They didn't learn any new skills. But a lot of it is through emotion. That's what these rules for radicals is telling you. Get into people's emotions. And remember, emotions cloud critical thinking. Rule number 11, the price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. So, never let the enemy score points because you're caught without a solution to the problem. Old Saul, you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Activist organizations have an agenda, and their strategy is to hold a place at the table, to be given a forum to wield their power. So they have to have a compromising solution. Well, they really don't compromise. Think the left is going to compromise? The left wants power, and their power is through authoritarianism. But here's what they do. They call people on the right the authoritarians and fascists, when if you think about who really is the fascists, it's the ones on the left. Why? Because they always have an agenda to stay in power, whether it's Marxism, whether it's communism. But they want to be the authority figure. They want to tell us how to vote. They want to tell us how to think. So they will use the media, religion, government, your job, of course, education. That's how they get their information to the public. And the public, for the most part, number of people in the public, they're not very smart. Again, they're getting into your feelings, especially Black people. Black people only vote for symbology, and they will always have hoods. Why? Number one, there's no men in the community. Number two, there's no business in the community. Number three, they're pretty comfortable. A number of them are pretty comfortable being where they are, and they will never get out of the prison, the hood, because it's all run by women. Women never build anything. They act like they have all this power. They really don't have any power. It's all conjecture. And number 12, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Cut off the support network, isolate the target from sympathy, go after people and not the institutions. People hurt faster than institutions. This is cruel, but very effective. Direct, personalized criticism and ridicule worse. Calling people racist, fascists, homophobes, misogynists. You can't counteract that. That's exactly what they do, the left in this country. And that's the rules for radicals. I gave you my commentary on it. And if you think about what I just said, it's happening to the government. And whether you're on the left, or on the right, if you are an everyday person, always question your government. Because government, they're supposed to be representing us. They don't represent us. They're really representing themselves through us. And they have big donors who have already bought them. In other words, the politicians are bought. This is why you have a lot of corruption in Washington. Now, again, when it comes to government, you got to get rid of all the sleaze, not just in Washington, but on the local and on the state level as well. Now, it's a lot easier to get rid of it on a state level and on a local level because we can see it even greater because we have more access to it. But when it comes to the federal government, you see any crazy bills going out, call your congresspeople. Be knowledgeable. Don't walk around with your heads in the clouds. if you're smart enough, you can take these rules for radicals and use it on your government. The bottom line is don't let them make you feel bad. See, Obama tried to make us feel bad as black men because we didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris. We didn't feel bad at all. Yeah, he could talk. And in fact, it's funny, for all those people that Kamala Harris paid to do concerts for, she bust in some people. She gave them money. You think they all voted for her? I don't. I believe they voted for Trump as well. I do. They just got paid. They couldn't turn down the money. And what happened to Kamala Harris? She got played. That's why she's not in power today. Because if you look at the rules for radicals, the Democrats are trying to come up with all kinds of excuses. So instead of blaming the Republicans or looking at the fact that they lost, they're blaming each other. And they're trying to make excuses. But in the end, they lost. Furthermore, they have the same old playbook. And when you utilize the same old playbook, you become predictable. Because in the end, the strategies didn't work. Why? Because they got played by Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some STEM content, you check out my second channel, the QCIS channel. On that channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, here's where you can find me. For the 411 Talk Zone radio show, find me on YouTube, Twitter, which is X, also on Rumble, and Truth Social. For the QCIS channel, I'm on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter, which is X, and LinkedIn. I usually do all of my videos on the QCIS channel Thursday or Friday, just depends on how tired I am. But you will get content on that channel every week. But listen to this. I want you to think about this. Don't let people take your power away from you. How do you know you have power? You know you have power when you're informed. When you're not informed, you'll believe anything. This is why I say this. In the end, be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Now, I could be talking about you and I may not be talking about you. But in the end, I will say this as well. If you don't like the shoe, you got to change that shoe. So, say it all again. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Whether I'm talking to you or not talking to you. If you don't like anything that's being said, or if it's not even about you, don't worry about it either. But if it is about you, change your shoes, change the way you think, change your attitude. Because in the end, it all comes down to you. And again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.